Welcome to Brutally Anna, a podcast about finding love, losing love, and all the things we think about but don't talk about enough. I'm your host, Anna Kai, aka Maybe Both across social media, here to remind you that life can be beautiful even when it's freaking brutal. So I always say that sometimes the right choice in life is not always the easy choice, and our guest today, Vanderpump Rules star Katie Maloney, is a prime example of how far you can go if you just make the right choice for you, even if it is the difficult choice. Between sharing the last decade of her life with us on reality TV, getting divorced, and now being an entrepreneur with her new sandwich shop, something about her that she co-owns with fellow Vanderpump Rules castmate Ariana Madix, Katie has shown time and time again that she isn't willing to settle for anyone and anything just because it's the path of least resistance. Here to inspire us all with the power of telling yourself a different story and why maybe we should all have what she calls a rebirth day. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank
Katie.
you. That was wonderful. Wow.
You've got a lot to go through. I mean, there's a lot about you online that I was like, I have so much to ask you.
I know. It's a blessing and a curse. So there's so much out there, but
you've lived many lives.
Yeah. I mean, I say it's a curse because when you're trying to get to know somebody new or you meet somebody, it's not an even playing field.
100%. Because they think they know you.
Well, they can just Google and get all this intimate information about my life where they're just like, I got to just ask questions. I'm like, hold on.
You got to stay present.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, but, it's having been on the show for over a decade, it's just piles up.
You put a lot of yourself out there. Well, before the show, you grew up in Park City, and then I love what you said about college because it was a very interesting thing. So you went to one semester of college and decided it wasn't for you, and you stopped. And I think what you said was, I wanted to go to college to try it out and see if it was right for me. Whereas I grew up the daughter of Chinese immigrants. It wasn't an option for me.
Right.
And so it was always an option for you. And I'm just kind of curious, were your parents supportive of this sort of unconventional, find your bliss path? Did you? So they were also very much unconventional in the sense of no, they don't care that you didn't go to college.
If you want to go. I mean, I didn't have something I really truly wanted to study or major in or anything, I wasn't planning to be a doctor or anything of that type of professional where you really do need the degree, you need the education. It's going to be years to get into all that. But because I grew up I loved drama and theater and acting and all that. So I just felt like it would be a waste of time and money to be at a 4-year school. Mm-hmm. But being that I was only 18, I was like, what do I know?
I know.
Maybe I should just go and maybe I'll love it. But I did not.
You did not love it.
I didn't jive with it, no.
So you dropped out, and then what did you do after that?
I worked. I wanted to have real life experience. So I, lived in the big city, Salt Lake City. I mean, I'm from a little tiny town. And just got some real life experience of just being on my own and working and what that really felt like and looked like to be responsible for my own rent and finances and expenses of that. So, but I also really always wanted to move to Los Angeles, but I was like, I don't think LA is for a 19-year-old, for an 18-year-old.
Very wise of you to think that, because they think a lot of people are I'm 19, I'm going to figure it out,
No, but I did move here when I was 20.
At least you waited until you're 20.
Yeah. So, I mean, I tried to be smart because I feel like LA is a really tough city. And without even knowing that, I could sense that because I'm from a really small town. So I was like, well, if I move to a slightly bigger city where I'm not in my little mountain town bubble, maybe that kind of experience will get me ready for something more major.
And it did for a year.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I moved here in June, so almost of 2006.
Oh my gosh.
So it's been nearly 18 years.
That's wild.
Man.
Before the crash.
Yeah. Before that.
That is.
I wasn't really affected by that. I was just barely getting by.
You were like, my whole life was a crash. So when the rest of the world came down to my level, I was like, great, I'm no longer the only hot mess.
Yeah, the water's hot. Get in. Yeah.
What was that like your first few years in LA where you knew you wanted to pursue acting when you came out here, right? Is that why you moved out here, or did you come out for a job?
That was always the plan. But I did get offered a job, and that's really what inspired and kind of accelerated my move out here. So when I first moved out here, I was working for a fashion wardrobe stylist as an assistant. And that was crazy because 90% of my job was running around town. And I was brand new to a huge city and did not know what I was doing. We didn't have, GPS on our phones, or even maybe you would have one in your car, but like no one had that. So I had to get around with like printing out MapQuest directions.
I remember those.
I think I had
the turn-by-turn directions.
Oh, yeah. And
go 0.3 miles as if I know what 0.3 miles feels like on foot or in a car.
Or how long that takes to know. Yeah. So I learned really quickly the city and getting around, but also just life in LA. And luckily, I'm like one of those people that I am really, really great with directions. I can go somewhere one time and then get back there by memory.
Oh, wow. I cannot say the same for myself.
No, I'm fortunate in that sense. But yeah, I mean, it was a tough a couple years. I mean, I always tell everyone when they're new to the city that you're probably going to hate it for a couple years. If you can stick it out and find a good group of friends or where you like to live, because it's a massive city. I mean, it's not just one neighborhood. I think people kind of always tend to think that it's just like West Hollywood because that's like glamorized, I guess. But
well, that's what's in the media.
Exactly. Yeah. So they think, and I lived in West Hollywood for 13 years. And when I considered moving out, I'm like, but I'm moving so far away from everything. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is not everything. Like there's so much that the city has to offer and so many cool little pockets that you can like go, and everything has its own sort of like personality. Every neighborhood, whether you're on the west side.
Well, LA is huge.
That's what I mean.
Because I lived in New York City for 11 years, and New York is actually very small. Mm-hmm. LA is this massive swath where like huge neighborhoods that exist, and everybody kind of just sticks to their own neighborhood because it takes so damn long to drive everywhere.
I mean, yeah, especially if you're on the west side. No hate to the west side. I mean, I love it, but it's like once you're there, you're kind of like there.
Right.
Like you can't really, the accessibility isn't enough to bring me out. I don't know.
Where do you live now?
I live in like Studio City, Valley Village, just over the hill. In the valley. The valley.
What precipitated that move?
Well, me and my ex-husband, we wanted to buy a house, and the houses are much more affordable over there. Mm-hmm. You get a little more bang for your buck than you do around here. And it's a slightly quieter, relatively speaking, area. And I felt like I could get around a lot easier. There's not just tons of traffic right outside your door. It's not as noisy. There's parking. There's parking everywhere. So yeah, when we bought our house, we moved out there in 2019.
And it's kind of hard to go back. That's how I feel, because my husband and I lived in the city for 11 years. We weren't together the whole time, but then we left during the pandemic. We moved to Connecticut, and like, I mean, that's a massive change. Going from Manhattan and Midtown to Connecticut, and now I can't imagine going back. Could you ever see yourself coming back to West Hollywood?
Probably not. Yeah. No, I mean, what I love about the area that I'm in is I can get anywhere and everywhere else so much easier, because the 101's like right there. You can just hop on, and I mean, there's still traffic, but it just feels like I can access everywhere else I want to go a lot easier. As opposed to once you're in West Hollywood, it's not like you're stuck. You're still in a pretty central area to, if you want to go west side or if you want to go east, but it's not as easy. But I really like it. I'm feeling like I want a change of scenery, but I hate moving. I hate moving so much that I'm just like, ugh.
Might as well just stick it out.
Yeah.
Might as well. But it's interesting because you've moved around a lot in your like professional career, I feel like. So you're very good at that, because I was actually wondering where your handle came from, your Instagram handle, Music Kills Kate, and then I figured it out because I was doing some Googling, because again, everything about you is online. But even before we get into what Music Kills Kate means, I found out that before Vanderpump, you were considering going into music publishing, because you were starting to think, hey, maybe acting's not for me, right? And you kind of fell in love with publishing. And you and I share this in common because when I was a freshman in college, I interned at a music publishing company. It was Cherry Lane Music Publishing. They got bought by BMG. And I remember being an intern and this was 2010. And like, I feel like technology was very different back then. Like I would get an email from like the managers that would send it to all the interns and be like, here's a commercial client or a film client and here's the vibe. It was always some vague email of like some, the tempo and like what they're looking for in the mood and like go search through our archaic catalog and find a song. And I really liked it. And so what about publishing did you like?
The longevity and they're always going to need music for film and television, but I also really loved that aspect of finding the right type of music for a particular project or whether it was a commercial and being able to submit the music that I thought was best because I could consider myself to be very audio visual, like being able to see something and know how like what kind of music could really evoke a sense or feeling or whatever emotion that they want.
Tell a story.
Yeah, exactly. So I really like that. I just like love music. So I thought like, well, the record industry, unless it's like a major record label, it's people have always been concerned whether or not there's purpose or need for it because everyone can kind of publish their own music online. That it's like, well, what does a record label offer you besides being indebted to them?
Yeah, right. And money to get started.
Exactly. That's what I mean. So I was like, well, maybe I don't work at a record label, but I just kind of like became familiar with the publishing end of it all and licensing through interning at Warner Brother Records because I interned in both of their A&R departments. But then when other interns or assistants had to like leave town, they were like, can you come in and fill in this department? And I just really enjoyed it.
Do you think you could still go back to that? Because I think this was forever ago. I found this interview. It was 10 years ago. You had said that your ultimate goal was to own a small record label that was also under the umbrella of a music supervision company as well. Yeah. Doing songs for movies and television and working with artists and supervise them. I mean, do you still feel like that's like in the cards for you, given how much has happened in the last 10 years? And like now you are a business owner in a very different sense, but...
Oh my God, I would love that. I would love that because I do still enjoy music in the same capacity that I always have. And I always love like newer artists, emerging artists and finding that like band or the song that like no one's heard before. And I just thought it would always be cool to work with a really like not young artist in terms of age, but just new to like industry and just like really like help make connections and help them along in, their career because there's some people that I just like when I even with my friends, when I find someone or an artist or a band that I really, really like, I always want to champion for them and be like, who do I know that I can introduce you to that's going to help you? And that's just always been the person I am. So
that's awesome. And also I really appreciate your love of early 2000s emo music. I mean, you've talked about it because like we're like around the same age. And for Gen Z, I'm like so sad they missed that era because like Death Cab for Cutie's album Plans like changed my life. And like, I don't know, were you in high school when that came out? Do you remember?
What year was this?
I don't remember, but I remember I was solidly in high school.
I graduated in 2004.
Okay, so maybe you were in college. But I don't or you were of college age. Sorry.
Had I gone to college perhaps, but
yeah. Or maybe you were in your one semester of college. Who knows? I need to look up when that came out. But do you remember that song, I Will Follow You Into the Dark?
Oh, yeah.
And I remember every single boy in high school who had ever even looked at a guitar learned how to play that song. It was like a teenage mating call. And I also learned how to play it, on guitar, like very, very poorly.
Obsessed.
It's actually not like a super difficult song to learn on guitar. The chords are, fairly basic. And I don't mean that as like any sort of shade. It's a brilliant song, but I think that's why so many people learned how to play it. But did you ever learn, because you love music, did you ever learn how to play an instrument or be a musician? Or were you just like an admirer of music?
I did for a little while pick up guitar and I did lessons and the whole thing, but I was never really great at that. And so if I can't be really good at something, I almost like am discouraged. I'm not one of those people that like is like, it just felt like one of those things. I'm like, I just feel like I'm just probably never going to quite get this. And I don't want to grow to resent it. So I'm just going to not. Even though I still have a guitar, but now I have wear nails usually all the time. So I don't know. Yeah. But when I was younger, I played in band. Okay. I played the clarinet and the saxophone.
Sexy.
Yeah.
Real sexy.
I know. I was like, I do.
Which you could still do with nails, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sometimes pick up the saxophone and will like.
Do you still remember how to play?
Barely.
And also you own a saxophone that you can just pick up and play?
Yeah. I own a beautiful Stelmar. It's like a black saxophone. I would actually take lessons and get back into that because I feel like that's because I was very good at it.
Saxophone.
Oh yeah, I was like first chair in jazz band and shit. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. This nerd alert. Yeah. I love that. And also if I'd known that, I would have had you bring your sax into that.
I've never played in front of it. Well, in a long time, but I was maybe once I can like get a little bit more comfortable with it. I don't remember all like the fingering. But I can still read music and things like that. I would just have to like relearn what notes.
Yeah. You would just, because you know it. It's just kind of, it's like you never forget how to ride a bike. Like you're probably never going to forget how to play sax. You just need to brush up on your saxophone
I don't have
skills.
a lot of time these days, but when I do, that's probably something I'm going to.
And that feels like something because I feel like people are always telling me, my therapist used to tell me when I was always so stressed out, she's like, what do you do for fun? Something that doesn't make you money, that isn't like a responsibility or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't have hobbies. Like, truly, I don't, like, I go out to dinner with my husband, I hang out with my dog, but I don't have hobbies. And also I love my job. So like, it's so unique. I get to just do this for my job. So I don't feel like I need a break from it. But occasionally I also go fucking nuts. And like my therapist was like, you need something to do that just is pure joy. Right. And like the saxophone could be that for you.
Yeah. I mean, playing music, listening to music, going to shows, that's like what I do for fun.
Right.
So I could easily turn that into work. So I get it.
Yeah. It's like, it's always like, well, how should I turn that into? I mean, was there something in your childhood or like adolescence that made you realize you love music? Because I asked this question because I always assumed I love music. I mean, I grew up just like, remember the like cassettes, and then it was the portable CD players, and then it was the first iteration of the MP3 player. It wasn't an iPhone. It was an MP3 player that was huge. It was like that box that all of a sudden you could put 100 songs onto, whereas before you'd have to listen to one CD at a time.
Yeah.
And I thought everyone loved music, or at least some type of music. And then I met my husband, who's not really into music. It's not that he dislikes it, but like there are people that are just not that into music and they're not that artistically inclined. And I thinking about it, I was like, why do I love music? Well, it's because like I feel like I went through a lot of shit growing up as a kid, and like music was my escape. Like you remember Good Charlotte in their inception?
Yeah.
And that, that first album, I was an angsty teenager listening to, the anthem and like Hold On and all that. It was like, it was the only thing that I had that I felt like I didn't have therapy, so I had Good Charlotte, I mean, did you have that growing up? Like what was it like in Park City? Did something make you love music?
I mean, I always just really loved music, and I like did dance for a long time. So that was a big component of dancing, was music. And in high school, I started making playlists for my friends, burning CDs, aka playlists. And they always like love them. So I was like, okay, so I guess I'm like a tastemaker. Like, that's weird. And
you were an influencer before you even knew it.
And then when I was introduced to like the scene, as we'll call it, which was like a lot of, undiscovered bands playing in these like dingy makeshift, music venues. There's one in Park City or in Salt Lake called Kilby Court, and it was like down a really narrow, like almost alleyway, and it was a converted shed, and there was a fire pit, and like everyone just like hung out and like smoked cigarettes at the fire pit, and it was just the smallest, sweatiest venue with the stage was like in a corner, and it was maybe like 8 by 8 feet, like not big at all, but it was incredible. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like all these like bands, they're not like Good Charlottes. They weren't the Sum 41s, but they were bands that that were influenced by them. So it was like all that same music and emo music, going to like Warped Tour. It was like,
oh my God, Warped Tour. That is the name I haven't heard in so long.
Yeah. And it's just, I don't know. I just was like, these are my people. I resonate so much with the, indie emo music of, the 20, oh, sorry, why do I keep saying 2003, 2003 to like 2005 was such an incredible time for me. Like just some of the bands that came out then, like, My Chemical Romance, like was playing really teeny tiny shows in like 2003 and 2004, but then they kind of blew up. But so seeing the emergence of bands that eventually got big, or maybe not quite as big, and now there's another resurgence now happening where like all those bands that I loved and went to go see on Warped Tour are like touring again. And it's such a cool time to like reunion be alive.
I know.
Yeah. So
it makes me feel old.
Yeah. The younger generation, they are really getting to experience it almost in the same way that we did, because these bands are playing live again. But yeah, I don't know. I just always love music, and then being introduced to that world like really set it off for me.
And you were like, this is home. This feels like I found my people, which is awesome.
Yeah, I know. And then, but the problem is I got introduced to like dudes and bands and their trouble. And it's still an issue for me now. But I don't know. Maybe
we're working on it.
Maybe I'll recover. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But
was there a song or an album that got you through like the toughest days of your divorce? Because there are songs that I listen to now from maybe 5-8 years ago where it's like I like remember, I'm like, oh my God, I remember exactly where I was in life when I was listening to the song on repeat.
I wouldn't say there was any songs that like got me through, but because it's so precious to me, all that, like, it's just all like, I'm trying to think if there's anyone like super specific. But I just really immersed myself back into all of that because it made me feel connected to a time that I really loved and a version of me that I really loved. So it's kind of like as a whole, I don't think there's any one specific album that really like, I mean, there's a lot,
right.
But one specific, I mean, I always like was such a big Coheed Cambria fan. So I've just
oh my gosh,
started consuming all of it all the time. And then I got really into like metal. So that's...
Oh, wow. I could never do that. I never got into metal.
There was like hardcore stuff that we'd go... I was into back in the day. But now like metal is a big one for me.
Is that what you're listening to these days?
I'm listening to everything, but like metal's definitely like up there for
You're playing saxophone and listening to metal. Like, who are you?
Well, I mean, the saxophone could fit into like maybe like some swancore vibes, which is like they mix a lot of like jazz elements into the music, even though it's like post like hardcore music.
That's so interesting. That is so wild. That's so cool.
So maybe maybe there's a place.
Maybe there's a place for, this is the next business of yours. The band you start, saxophone.
Oh, no.
Metal saxophone. I think what I loved about your divorce, not the fact that you got divorced, obviously. I'm sorry about that. But, what's really empowering about that whole situation and how it went down is that, like, you expressed your needs. You gave your ex-husband multiple chances and your needs were not met and you left. And it sounds like such a simple thing, but you were like, I'm not getting what I need and I'm probably not going to. So I'm not going to sit here and try to fix this situation. Whereas like, because of the nature of my content, I get a lot of DMs from women who are in the position you were in maybe in 2021. Because you said you kind of saw the writing on the wall for a while before, obviously. It's not like you wake up one day and you decide to get divorced.
No.
It's always kind of a process.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely wake up and I think once that little voice starts to creep up in your head, maybe it's not like I want to get divorced, but like, hey, maybe this isn't the life and the future and everything that you wanted. And maybe there's something to pay attention to there. Like, I think it's like that was sort of like the internal dialogue I started having with myself because for a long time, I normalized bad behavior and treatment that I just didn't deserve. And I'm not saying that I was innocent in all of it. Of course, I can be very difficult. But ultimately, I just was with someone that didn't know how to be a partner. And I really wanted that. I wanted that kind of marriage and that type of life with somebody where we're both building something together. We both have the same goals and intentions and everything like that. And I just like, it wasn't there. And I kept thinking like, well, maybe once we get past this, season, or, maybe once he opens the bar, or maybe, it never happened. And I think all of us did different things during pandemic to like take care of ourselves. And I was just like, I'd been feeling not great about myself, and I was like insecure about a lot of things. And I wanted to just work on feeling better about myself and like practice affirmations. And that stuff is very powerful and it really works. And so I think once I started to feel a lot more confident and I had that sort of boost of, I don't know, what do you want, serotonin and happy, like I just started to love myself again. And I think through that process, I was looking at the rest of my life being like, hold on, like, I don't deserve this. I always thought I did. I don't know. I think I just normalized it so much to myself, but I just wanted to be happy. And I was still very much in love with him. And it was really heartbreaking to come to that sort of conclusion of like understanding what's best for me, but just we're trying to fight it.
I think that is the strongest thing any woman can do, because it's not like you fell out of love with him, because it's easy to break up with somebody. Like, I have never broken up with somebody that I'm like actively in love with. I've always been dumped by the person that I'm in love with. Same. And, it's like thinking about breaking up with some of my exes in the middle of being in love with them. I mean, that's so tough, because it's so easy to break up with a guy that you're like, nah, I fell out of love with you, right? But you were still in love with him, and you're just like, but I'm just not getting what I need, and I need to put me first. I mean,
there were things that I became checked out of once I really started to like put my head in it. So I mean, like maybe I was still in love with him, but emotionally it became very difficult to be with him because, when someone doesn't show up for you the way that it hurts. There was a lot of hurt that was built up. There was a lot of, he had like cheated on me in the past. And so there was things that I hadn't healed that were definitely weighing on me and affected my feelings towards him. But like all in all, like, I was still very much in love with this person and wanted to be with them, but they just didn't know how.
Yeah. But I think so many women in your position would not pull the trigger and are still with the men who don't treat them well, but they're in love with them. So what would you say to those women who are maybe in the position you were in 2021? Like, how do you pull the trigger when you know? Because so much of my advice is not because people don't know it. It's because people don't want to act on it.
Yeah. I think it is the hardest thing to take a leap of faith, to bet on yourself, to really decenter everything else and put yourself at the center of it all. Because it feels counterintuitive to us as like being with somebody and wanting to care for them and be a partner and show up for them, to all of a sudden turn it around and just start to focus on your own needs. And I think a lot of times I don't want to like bring emotional abuse into it, but that's kind of, I think, a big part of it. Because I think so many women feel that they don't deserve more and that if they leave, they have to start over. And what if they're alone forever? So like, maybe I'll just stick it out. Maybe I can just stay with him. Maybe we can try therapy, or maybe the lies we tell ourselves, basically.
Oh my God. I mean, we're experts at gaslighting ourselves.
So I think just like anyone that's feeling that way just needs to, I don't know if it's like writing lists, journaling, however it is that you can get your inner thoughts out and like to the core, the deepest bits of you, to see them in front of you. And I think that's a big thing. If you were actually writing it out and seeing it like in front of your face and not just like thinking on it or, reflecting on it, but really seeing it, I think you'll begin to realize that like, wow, like I really want more for myself and just decide whether that's important to you or not, which it should be. But I think it can be really, I know it's difficult because once you start saying those things out loud, you cannot take them back.
Right.
It's really hard to just ignore the voice. The voice for me got really loud. So I just think if you're already kind of in that place, it's probably not going to get better because you're entertaining thoughts. You obviously have feelings. There's obviously elements about the relationship that aren't working. And I mean, and not to say that it can't turn around for a lot of people, but it takes two to do that. Yeah. So I think being brave and not being scared. And the unknown at first is really scary because your life as you knew it, the future we're building is gone and done. But understanding that you're like, no, now I can decide what kind of life I want. Like what's going to like fill my cup every day, what's going to make me happy. And you don't have to worry about someone else's feelings. You don't have to worry about how they make you feel. You get to just really put yourself at the center of your life and your universe. And the unknown now is like really exciting. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going to be next year. Who knows? I could be anywhere. I could meet anyone. Anything can happen. And I think just having slightly delusional mentality helped me a lot.
That's amazing. But it's starting, it's like, you know, the whole metaphor of the phoenix rising from the ashes, right? Because I'm a sucker for metaphors, but it is true. Yeah. It's like you burned your old life down to the ground, and like now what are you going to build on top of it? Mm-hmm. And you can build anything because you're not working with like an old, I mean, I talk about this a lot. I think about, I live in Connecticut. There's a ton of old houses. And sometimes you look at these old houses and people have tried to like add on to these old houses because the kitchen was too small back then, or like, you know, and then, but they look like Frankenstein houses, yeah. You know, it's like they don't look right because it wasn't the original structure, and they're trying to, you know, make up for what just wasn't working, and it's still not really working, but now you have an extra bedroom off of the garage. That doesn't make sense. And I think of relationships like that, where it's like, if you're trying to build onto a foundation that doesn't support what you're trying to build, it's better to just demolish it. And that's what people do. They demolish old houses and they build a new on the land. And then the new house is so much better and it fits today's needs and it's got all the fancy things. And like, that's what you're building, you know?
Yeah.
And like, that's kind of how you're living your best life right now. So I'm curious because you were with Tom for so long, and people always say that the person you marry is not the person you divorce. Do you feel like the Tom you divorced was the same Tom you married and you just ignored it? Or do you think he changed as you guys grew up together because of how long you were together?
A lot of times I think he is the same person I married. And that person is wonderful.
Right.
But that person I also fell in love with when I was 25 years old. And I'm not 25. I've grown a lot, and I've had to drag him through, but I feel like I really had to drag him through a lot of phases in life of like committing, moving in together, getting engaged, getting married, talking about having kids, like all of those things. I just feel like I was constantly just like, come on, you can do it. Come on. And I don't know why I did that. I just felt like he just was so unsure. It wasn't because he necessarily didn't want to or couldn't, but that he was just like unsure and he needed like confidence, support, like whatever. I don't know. He needed a woman to prop him up as usual. But I think just, yeah, when I look back, I'm like, wow, like, no, I just grew and he didn't, or we didn't grow together at the same pace. And I can't be in this like arrested development with him where I'm just sort of stuck in that place. Like I really felt like I was meant to be more in a different person, and I couldn't do that in that relationship. And like he was content with how things were and still up to the same no good, you know, he wanted to like hang out with his friends and do that. And I was just like, okay, like I get that. Like I love spending time with my friends, but like I also want us to come home to each other every night and do that thing as well. And he didn't get it. And I couldn't understand why. So I think ultimately just history kept repeating itself over and over, and it kind of just beat me down into that place where I just felt like, okay, well, this, I guess I've been with him for so long. I'm getting to this age. Do I really want to start over? Can I start over? Will I meet someone? Am I worthy of that? Like really sad thoughts. But I mean, when I had to be honest with myself and be like, but nothing's going to change. He's not going to change. He doesn't want to change. And I can't, this is one change I cannot drag him through. So,
You know, I always say, don't be friends with your ex, kind of as a general rule of thumb. But what is so interesting about you and Tom is that you've maintained a friendship. I mean, not without struggle, but you guys are on good terms. And I think part of that, you know, you have to work together. I mean, but do you think it was possible? Did you think it was possible to be friends with your ex prior to Tom, or have you learned?
I always thought it was so sad when you would be in a relationship with somebody or be so close to that person and then you break up and you become like strangers. Like I think is just feels wrong to me. And it's not an excuse to keep someone around, but it just feels like if they were once special to you, they should try to remain in your life in some capacity. So I mean, like, I'm not like super tight with all my exes, but like they could, to every now and then you get a text, how's life, how are things, how's your kids, how's the family, how's that? And it's really nice that there's still that we can maintain some semblance of a relationship. And with Tom and I think our problem was never our friendship. We had a great friendship. It was when I needed him to step up to be a partner. That's where he couldn't struggle. That's where he struggled the most.
Right.
So when we broke up and there was no longer that pressure on him or on I or on this like marriage and relationship that we had together, I got to just go like this and be like, all right, like however you show up, you can show up however you want to this because I don't need anything from you. Yeah, I don't. So we just kind of have been able to have that sort of fun banter and talk and like we did that little part of what we had is still there even though it's not romantic. It's nothing like that. It's just nice.
Maybe your friendship is what kept you together for so long.
I think I think that has a lot to do with it because we did have a lot of fun and I really liked him.
Right.
You know, I thought he was just a fun guy, funny, like good sense of humor. He's really smart. All of those things that you really like out of friendships that you don't need anyone to have any real responsibility to you. Right. We're all there, but yeah. So.
And I think that's the toughest part is so many of us, you know, myself included, I think you want to demonize your ex and say like they were the bad guy. But it's like, okay, like, of course, I'm sure he did things that were not great and maybe you did things that were not great. But at the end of the day, you still like him as a person. And I think that takes a really big person to admit that because, you know, it's over and you sort of, I think the immediate aftermath is you always want to blame somebody. But it's like, look, he's not there. I mean, we all have our opinions on what happened there. And I think, you know, you deserve better. But at the end of the day, he's not a bad guy and you can still be friends with him. I mean, do you think you'd be friends with him if you didn't have to work with him?
I think so. I mean, we have dogs and we're not sharing the dogs like 1 week.
A custody arrangement.
I mean, we tried that for a while, but ultimately I feel like it was causing us to be in a lot more contact, which I as much as I want to like be tight with him, I don't want to tell him my schedule every single week. I don't really want to know his schedule every week. And also, most importantly, I think it was harder on the dogs because they really thrive in like their routine and their, you know, and he was always the one that implemented all that. Like I did other stuff in the household, but like he was always like the dog, you know,
the dog guy.
He could make their dinner like I couldn't make their dinner because what he does for them is insane, and I will never do that.
What does he do
would, like,
for them?
Sometimes chew up if he's making like if he's putting steak in there, he'll like chew up the steak and then spit it into the bowl.
Oh my God, really?
And then mix it up with his fingers. He's like, it really integrates all the flavors in the juice. I'm like, most dogs just get kibble, but like these dogs are so spoiled by him and the attention that he gives them that like I'm never gonna match that. And also they're like his. I love them endlessly, but they're like his lifeline.
Okay.
So I just knew that like, okay, if push came to shove and like one of us was going to move out of state or something, they're not going to come with me. I'm not going to do that to him. And it breaks my heart, but I just
It would break his heart
Oh
more.
My God, yeah. And we're not going to separate them. So I just, having the sort of week on, week off, or then sometimes a little bit longer kind of helped prepare me for that because it was just going from like being with him every day to like not was the hardest part. But I got acclimated to not being with them as much. And so now I'm with them even less. But I mean, I can see them anytime I want.
Right.
Or if he like is traveling or goes out, like so I still like, they're still with me like every 4 to 6 weeks for a little period of time. And it's nice.
It's just not as regimented of a schedule.
Yeah. They need familiarity. They need consistency. He and I both have very different schedules and lifestyles. And I'm not going to get on his pattern and he's not going to get on mine.
That's how you got divorced, right?
Yeah.
Do you think you'll get married again? I mean, I assume you want to find like, because I have a girlfriend going through a divorce right now and she shares a kid with her ex-husband. So that's a whole different level. You can't just be like, yeah, I'm actually just only going to see my kid. You know, it's different. I'm a dog mom. So like, I get it, but I'm sorry. Kids are different than dogs. And she's like, you know, I don't want to get married again, but I want a life partner. I want companionship. She's like, I'm very open to that, but I don't need the paper and all of that. So how do you feel about that post-divorce?
Yeah. if it means not having to get divorced again, then I will avoid marriage because it's really devastating.
Yeah.
No matter who asks for it, no matter how necessary it is really just a mind fuck to go through that with somebody. And then you just get this like notification like, all right, you're divorced. Just like that. Like it's so funny because the marriage part of it's so celebratory. It's so fun. And everyone's obsessed with it. And everyone's so happy. And then you get divorced. And everyone's like, ooh. It's just so like, oh, I don't know. I don't like it. But if I met someone and like fell in love and they love me and they were like, I really want marriage. I really like that is super important to me. I'd be like,
you would do it for them.
I would do it
possibly.
for them. But for myself, like, no, I mean, I definitely like don't want to be solo alone forever.
You don't want to be alone forever.
No, I mean, we all like companionship. We all kind of want that person to like spend vacations with and holidays with and those special, the moments.
First call after something good happens.
For sure. Yeah. But I don't know, like I have such great friendships with like my girlfriends right now that it's almost like unless you can compete with that and with myself, like no.
Yeah. You're not welcome into my life.
It's so not a priority to meet someone right now because, I've met people, but they're just so disappointing. It is so tragic.
Well, dating in LA, I mean, I dated in New York City, which I thought was enough of a shit show, but I feel like dating in LA is its own shit show because I hear from people out here that I know that it's like, it's just crazy because due to the fact that entertainment is the main industry out here, that bleeds a lot into dating and just the men out here. I mean, what's your experience? And also, I don't even know how to even begin dating as you, where like we were talking about this, like everybody can find out everything about you, or at least a lot about you, maybe not everything, but how do you navigate dating?
I do my best, but yeah, it's always interesting because when you meet somebody and, maybe you get on social media and they see like they start, oh, okay. Because if they meet me out, they might not know. The most guys that I'm meeting, they're not watching Bravo.
Really? Oh my God! All my husband's friends watch
with their wives.
And sometimes the wives don't watch, and these are my husband's friends are like finance bros. So this is not, a lot of
interesting. I mean, but that's just not as common. Usually, if I meet someone and they like know the show, I'm like, who cooked you? Like, what? And they're like, oh, I used to watch with like my ex. And I was like, okay, well, that origin story makes a lot more sense. Right. But I'm not judging a guy that sits at home and watches some Housewives. Like, it's great. It's culture. But
it's culture.
It is. But yeah, so I usually have to explain it and they're asking a lot of questions. They're like, oh, should I check it out? And I'm like, no. Like if they happen to have seen the show, what can I do about it? They're still sitting here talking to me. So clearly I didn't completely turn them off. But I don't know why someone would want to watch it. It's like that was a whole lifetime. Basically, I lived on a show of like a life that isn't mine anymore. And it's like, I don't know if you want to like watch me like get engaged and get married and do that whole thing with like another person, like go ahead. But I don't know. I want someone to like get to know me in real life, the person I am today, and not just from a TV show from seasons back where I'm like,
you're a different person,
different place. Yeah, I've had like 17 software updates since then, so I just like I can't like imagine like them trying to compare that version to me, and I feel like it's not great. But they can still go on to Google, and that's kind of not fair.
Right.
Because sometimes there's just like articles that pop up and without a lot of context, they're like, what is this about? Like, are you beefing with all these people? I'm like, that's just gossip column, like talking about fights. So, like, it's so much to explain to a person, but I do worry that it would be a turnoff for someone and that just would mean that they're not for me, but I'm going to probably run into that a lot more.
But I think the right person is not going to care. They're going to figure out who you are like face to face in the present moment. I mean, how do you meet guys or girls or anything, how do you meet people right now?
Through friends.
Okay.
Mostly like just in the wild, IRL. Yeah, like through friends. I mean, that's my favorite way to meet somebody because they're kind of vetted. They're like, he's not a creep. He's actually a really good guy. I can get like a little more background on the person. Whereas like apps like freak me out. Have
you ever done them?
Okay, the only time I ever did dating app was when we went to Europe.
Oh. And that seems not exactly safe.
You would be surprised.
You're like, I'm not going to do a dating app in my hometown of LA where I know my way around and how to escape, but I'll go to Europe and date some stranger out there.
Yeah, it's exactly what happened.
Okay. Wait, so walk me through what happened.
Well, I was with a couple of my girlfriends and we were going to London and then we went to Barcelona, Spain, and then we went to Lisbon. So it was just kind of like, what's it like out here in these streets with these guys? And I did end up meeting up with one, and he was so attractive and so nice. And like I had shared my location with my friends. Like I was like, it was the middle of the day, so
brought you pepper spray.
I felt I feel like I'm pretty good at reading people and like energy and understanding if they're
safe or not.
Yeah. So I was like, I'll just leave if that's the case. Like,
right.
It's not like he knew where I was staying or anything like that. Right. But yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. But like, I just felt like because I'm like, I'm never going to like probably see any of these people again. Like, what does it matter if like in the likelihood of them knowing like who I am? I don't know. But yeah, here I just feel like I can meet all those like rodents out in the world. Why do I need to play the numbers game and quantify my dating experience? It just feels like such a sport. And it's just not been a priority to me. I'm like, I feel like, I don't know. I just don't like to go on like a bunch of dates.
Right.
It's not how I like to spend my time. I'd rather hang out with my friends.
Well, you're like fulfilled enough. Like you don't feel lonely in your personal life. So it's like, why would I then take time away from people I know I like spending time with to go sit on a bunch of first dates with men that I probably don't like as much, because it's just not a priority right now, which is great.
Yeah, and I don't need a free meal anymore. So I'm good. I'm not trying to like fill a position in my life.
Right.
My life is rocks as I know it. So if I meet someone and they can really compete with everything else I got going on, then cool. But I just don't feel like forcing that into my life. And I'm at this point too where it's like, I also don't do like casual dating very well because I can either it's going to be miserable or I'm going to really like somebody and that's...
It's like there's no in between.
Exactly. And some people I want to be so casual and nonchalant about stuff. And the nonchalant stuff really irks me because I'm very like intentional with people. Like I like really am direct and transparent and I communicate things. And when I get the wishy-washy, kick the can around shit, I'm just like, I gotta go.
And there's so much of that in the big cities. And that's what I struggled with when I was dating is that so many guys were like, oh, I really like you. You're so special. But, I don't know, and I'm just like, okay, well, if I'm that great, like, why aren't you trying to take the next step? And it's like so hard. I think it's our generation too. We're a very non-committal generation. And I don't know what that is. But it's like, I always think it's so bizarre that people are like, oh, we're exclusive, but we're not boyfriend, girlfriend. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean?
I don't know what that means.
Right? But because it's like, to me, if you are on a traditional path towards marriage, if that is the end goal, and it might not be for a lot of people, but for a lot of people it is, the boyfriend-girlfriend dating phase is the test phase for marriage. Why is there a test phase then for the test phase? Like you're in this weird,
it's like
limbo.
Talking stage, situationships,
exclusive stage. Maybe boyfriend, girlfriend, it's bizarre. I think it comes down to people are so afraid of making the wrong decision that they don't make any decision. And therefore, like they just are directionless with their life. I heard this great thing I remember from a college professor one time. They were like, if spoiled for choice, do not fail to choose something because without choice, the world becomes unmanageable. And I very much felt like that, in college, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. The world's your freaking oyster. And in some ways, I felt that again when I was researching you because you by far have been the most, there's so much about you that it was almost like, what do I even focus on, because your life is just, you've lived it in front of everybody for so long. And so it's like, that's the thing. It's like, what do you choose? Because like you're spoiled for choice.
I know. I choose myself. That's what I choose. 100%. Because I don't understand people that want experiences like a partnership or companionship or commitment, but don't themselves understand the responsibility or their end of it all. And that's confusing.
Right.
And frustrating. And I just, I don't know. Especially sometimes I meet guys, I'm like, you're like 35. Like, what are you still out here being like, I just am not long further in my career than I want to be. And I'm like, whoever is.
I know.
The more successful you become, the more success you want. The more money you make, the more money
Yes.
you want to make. The more like I don't think you're ever going to be completely satisfied.
Well, the goalpost is always moving. And I realized that because I always thought like, oh, if I ever got to this point, I'd feel like I've made it. I'm good. I don't need more. And now I'm just like, now I want more. And it's you, again, if you're just a driven person and you achieve things, it's just, there's always more. And the men who used to say to me in New York, I can't be with you because I'm not where I want to be in my career or my life. I'm like, that's just like such a cop-out. I'd rather honestly have you tell me that you don't like me enough to want to commit to me than tell me it's your life circumstance, because I had that happen. The guy I dated prior to meeting my husband broke up with me really because I was the first girl I think he dated after he broke off his engagement. So I think I met him like 2 weeks after his ex-fiance moved out, and he wasn't expecting to get into it. He was just going to try out the apps, right, for the first time in his 30s. And I was his first date or second, I don't know, but I was up there. And I remember saying to him, I'm not going to hook up with you unless this is a committed relationship. And I was very, very intentional like you are. I don't date casually. I don't know how to be casual. Like I hate small talk, because I'm just like, let's just get to the core of who you are and what this is. And I think, we had enough of a connection where he was like, I think he thought, I don't think he was trying to deceive me, but maybe he was deceiving himself into thinking that he was ready for a relationship when he wasn't, because who would be after breaking off an engagement?
Totally.
And so he broke up with me 9 months later, and he told me it was because he was not where he wanted to be with his life and his career. And he wasn't ready to be with somebody, but I see him on the apps because we met on an app. So you can see when the person's like active again and he's like changing his bio. I'm like, you just were not ready to commit to another girl. You wanted to see what kind of person you wanted. And like that to me was like more insulting because it's like, don't use your career as a cop out, right?
Right. Because the fine print there is that I'm just not into you.
I'm just not that into you. Or I thought I could do better than you.
And that is the kiss of death. Right. Really, people get into like the grass is greener thing. It becomes cyclical, and that they stay in that cycle for a really long time.
Well, I'm sure you've seen it. I mean, LA is like the prime.
There's just everyone's looking for the next thing. Truthfully, I've had maybe 2 guys in my whole dating experience before Tom to now be straight up with me, being like, hey, there's somebody else that I was also seeing, and I like really want to pursue that person, and I think you're wonderful, and this and that, and I had so much respect for them that they were just so kind about it and just really just brutally honest, and I didn't feel like they were trying to like sugarcoat anything. It was just there, and I was like, damn, like thank you, I appreciate that, rather than like ghosting or just like giving me the bullshit like excuse of not being further along in your career, because it's like,
I will say I did have one guy tell me that he was going to pursue something with somebody else. And this was after, and this is where the opposite thing sort of happened to me. Like, and this man was totally unhinged in retrospect, but I remember I went on one date with a guy and he was like perfect on paper, was really good looking, and it was a great date. And then we had went on a date right before Christmas. Like Christmas kind of always like screws everything up when you first start seeing somebody, because like I left for 2 weeks and he was gone and everybody is like gone to see family, and we were texting all throughout Christmas and New Year's, and he was like, I can't wait to see you. And, we get back. And I was like, cool. And then like right after New Year's Day, he texted me and he's like, hey, Anna, like I loved meeting you and spending time with you, like all fucking 1.5 hours I spent with you on our only date. And he was like, but I have to be upfront. I met somebody else shortly before meeting you, and the relationship progressed very quickly. And I feel like I'm at a point with her right now where like it wouldn't be fair to continue seeing you. And I was like, wow. Respect, right? And I was like, totally understand. Thank you. So was I disappointed? Yeah. Because I'd also spent the last like 2 weeks kind of texting with him thinking, you're like, oh my God, like I'm going to see this person again. Right. I was like,
limerence kicks in.
I know. Right. And I was a little disappointed, but I was like, whatever. It was one date. And he was like, but if it doesn't work out with her, you'll be the first person I call. And I was kind of like, a little taken aback by that comment. And I was like, haha, I hope for both of our sakes that doesn't happen. And I was serious because I was like, even though I was like a hot mess at the time, I was in my 20s, didn't know what I was doing with my career. There was a lot going on. I'd just broken up with a very long-term relationship that I'd been living with. And I was like, you're not coming back to me because I'm not going to let you come back to me because I was your second choice. Like, I don't care like where in the progression you met me. If I was that great, you would have stopped seeing this other person for me. I believe that,
100%.
you know?
You would not have been an option. You would have been the option.
Exactly.
The only option. Yeah. So that's...
Well, guess what? 4 months later... And I made it a practice not to save the numbers of the guys that like I wasn't actually in a relationship with. So I didn't save this guy's number. You know, I went on one date with him. I get a text out of the blue and I have no idea who the hell it is. It's midnight, East Coast time. And it was just Anna. Literally the text was Anna, ! And I was like, I have no idea who this is. And so I found out, and this doesn't always work, but it sometimes does if they have WhatsApp. If you save an unknown number as just some random name. So I just put whatever, Chad in my phone. And then you go into WhatsApp and you pull them up on WhatsApp. If they have a WhatsApp profile with their picture on it, you'll know who it is.
Oh,
I know, right?
Interesting.
I know, sneaky. So that has worked for me a couple times because a couple of the guys I've dated have WhatsApps. And this is how little like we got to know each other. I pulled up his photo and I still didn't know who it was for like a beat. I was like, who just texted me? And I was like, oh my God, that Chad. I was like, wow. This was literally, I mean, again, one date. And I was like, this motherfucker actually thought he could come back to me. And then I didn't respond, of course, because I was like, I have nothing to say to you. Like, I was single at the time. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, it wasn't like I was with somebody and like it was easy for me to say no. I was like very single and I didn't want to be single. And then he followed up like 10 minutes later and he was like, sorry for the late text. I was like, oh, now you say it because I didn't respond. He's like, I'm in SF right now. I'm on West Coast time. You know, let's catch up when I'm back. That's all it said. I was like, we're not friends. There's no catching up. And then he proceeded to text me, I shit you not, every week for the next 3 months. And the texts got progressively more and more insane. Oh and God. Then we met on an app called The League. I don't know if you remember that.
I've heard of it. But
yeah,
I don't.
It was like a big thing in New York, I feel like, back then. And on that app, the matches would expire after 30 days. So after 30 days, you wouldn't be able to talk to somebody anymore. But if you went into your like match archive, you could pay to revive the conversation so you could reconnect with them. So he paid to revive. He was like, hey, Anna, sorry, I brought you back from the match cemetery. Kind of creepy, I know. I'm like, no, what's been creepy is that you've been messaging me every single week for the last 2 months without any response. And they were so weird. He was like, can I just get like a response? I totally get it if you're not into it. I totally get it. But just let me know. Just let me know. Like, can I get a proof of life? Anything. Then he rematched me on The League because he was like, oh, just in case like you changed your number and you're not getting my text, like I just want to know. And I feel like that is an example of like, there's the guy that lets you go because he's like, truly, I found somebody, you know, that I like better or I mesh with better. And there's the guy that lets you go, but thinks you're still an option. And like, that's what happened to me. So that my one experience with a man being honest and like not ghosting me was actually horrible.
God.
And I told that story on social media a while ago. And it's funny because people will say like, well, like you're such an asshole. Why didn't you respond? Like he was so gracious and not ghosting you and being upfront with you. I was like, no. Actually, if you read the fine print, he was not gracious because he was doing me a favor. He was being gracious. He sent me that initial text saying, I'm going to go with somebody else because I want to keep you as an option in case it doesn't work out. Yeah. And so that's not him being gracious. That's him looking out for him. I was like, this is insane. Like, you don't owe anybody an explanation. It wasn't ghosting. The conversation had ended 4 months ago.
Yeah, you made your decision.
Right? It's like, it's wild.
Yeah, and no one should be able to, and listen, I've been a real dumb bitch in the past, but like when someone is telling you basically, I'm going to put you on ice.
Yeah.
On the back burner, whatever you want to call it. in case things don't work out, like as
Right.
if they get to make that choice and you don't have any agency in it. Like it's kind of wild to me. I mean, the audacity.
The audacity. I know. The audacity.
Wild.
Isn't that crazy?
I mean, I've never been the person that like blocks or does that kind of thing. I don't know. I feel like weird about it, but I've had to do that recently just because sometimes it's not necessarily that the guy's like an asshole. Like they're usually really nice guys, but they just
don't get it.
They're just not getting. Well, but they're also kind of like, you want to just keep dragging me along when I've made it pretty clear what I think and what I feel. And you want to kind of match that energy, but not really do anything about it. So you know what? Rather than me just being in some entertainment in your phone when you feel like it, when it's convenient to you, because I'm never going to be convenient for anybody, I'm just going to remove the access.
Right. I love that.
So
not everyone deserves access.
No. And as much as like, I don't necessarily think they're bad guys, but it's just like, I don't know what's going on with them in their life, but it's not.
You don't need that chaos in your life.
It's not for me, no.
Yeah. I mean, you dealt with it and you kind of came out on the other side, so you don't need to reinvite that chaos in the form of another man into your life.
Oh, God, no. Sounds awful.
I think it's super brave of you that you shared your abortion story because, regardless of which side of the, political argument you land on, I think everybody can agree that it takes a lot to even share that because of how divided our country is right now. And, you said a huge part of the reason you and Tom decided not to keep the baby is because you were too young and ill-equipped to handle being a mom. I mean, do you feel like you're in a better position now to be one? I mean, I know you're not with anybody, but like, what's your stance on like motherhood and like, what are your feelings?
It kind of changed a bit. When you're with somebody and you're kind of building up future, it's a little easier to envision like family and all that. But then when you're kind of out of it, it's not because you're just alone, but I just start to think like, I'm looking at the chaos in the world around me and just wondering like, do I really want to bring more life into it?
Right.
It's kind of a mess. So there's that aspect of considering family, but I'm 38. I'm so single. I've not even met anyone. And I'm not somebody that like, I really desperately wanted to be a mother. I wanted to build a family with somebody, but I feel like maybe that ship has sailed and I really like my life and that would completely change things and not,
So you're not going to go freeze your eggs and become a single mom and just get a sperm donor?
No, and I know people that do that, and I think I think that is so wonderful that women have that choice. They're able to do that. They can, be independent woman and raise a kid on their own.
Moms by choice.
Exactly. But for me, I'm like, no. I think I just in redesigning my life, it hasn't really included children. I mean, again, I hate to say like never.
Yeah.
But I think
even if one day you can't have your own biological children, I mean, if you
options.
really, you could adopt, I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah. And I would be open to that if that was what was really important to somebody else, because it's not just about me wanting to be a mom. It's about like wanting to build that with someone else.
Would you date or end up with a guy who had kids from a prior marriage or relationship?
Yeah, that has come up in meeting people for sure. And I think it's very dependent on the person, what their relationship is like with their ex. I think it varies. So it's definitely like a no, but I mean, I don't know. There's some instances where I'm just like, this feels weird.
Right. like, I don't know if I don't know if I want to sign up to be a stepmom to your kids.
Well, it's not even that. It just seems that like maybe them and their ex don't have the best relationship. And it's like, I don't really want to be drug into any of that. I don't want to have to if you can barely get along with your ex, I don't think I'm going to. I don't like a lot of people in the world. And I don't want to have to feel like I have to fake it with someone just because they're like this important person in your life because you have a kid with them and you're trying, it's just, it can be really messy.
Right.
So it just really depends on like what their child's mother's like, what their relationship is like, what there's a lot of things. I'll take it case by case.
Right. You'll see. It's a case by case, decision. No, that's smart. Well, part of the reason you said you didn't want to be a mom was because you were in a really bad place mentally, like after your accident. And it's crazy. You fell through a skylight in New York. right? In LA. In LA.
Uh-huh.
You fell through a skylight in LA and you broke your jaw, collarbone, and you suffered a traumatic brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
So like you came out very scathed. But then you talk about how like November 9th, 2009 is your rebirth day.
Yeah.
Because of how much, recovering, both physically and mentally from that accident taught you. I mean, what was the best thing to come out of that accident?
Just being able to celebrate being alive and life in itself. I think, I was also really, as a young adult, I wasn't like a child, but like being 24 when it happened and faced with mortality, it like really shifts how you look at things and how you handle things. And, that's when I made the change of like wanting to, go into music perhaps, because I was just like, wow, life, it can be so uncertain. And I'm over here just like going on auditions and like not getting work because of some subjective whatever.
Yeah, you're not tall enough, you're not this enough.
Yeah, and I'm just like, that's not the kind of life I want. I want to have a little bit more control over my future and the things that I'm doing and filling my time with and career-wise. So that was a nice thing to come out of it, just being kind of having a new lease on life and a new perspective on things, for sure. I mean, it was a lot of like emotional, mental recovery too that impacted my relationships, friendships, everything. So that was probably the worst thing to come out of it.
It impacted your friendships?
Well, yeah, because I, as a result of having brain injury, it alters your personality. I like had a hard time regulating emotions and it was very short fused, and that was not anything I was familiar with. I mean, I was like, could always be like a little like sassy when I'm growing up, but like, no, this was like on another level. And so I definitely had a hard time relating to people in the same way because I just was like, well, how do you not get this? How do you not understand this? I just felt like I was frustrated all the time. Right. So yeah, that definitely impacted my friendships and especially in relationships too, because when you're not feeling you're emotionally supported, it's terrible. It's a terrible place to be, especially for somebody that like has a hard time understanding what they're feeling sometimes.
How long did it take you to recover from that? I don't mean just physically. Like, I just mean like, was there a moment or like a year or a week where you were like, oh, I'm through it. I'm on the other side of this mentally?
No, not really. It's a kind of, you just get to a point where you have to accept that this is how things are and just try to work on whether it's like therapy or your own sort of practices of just learning how to navigate through life again, just how you operate. That was, yeah. So it never was like a moment where like, oh, okay, I'm through it.
Right.
Because I would have good days and then I'd go through months of just like not great.
And like mental health and depression and all that. Yeah. So you went to therapy?
More recently in the last like few years post like divorce, I got into like doing like shadow work. And so I feel like I'm in the best place I've ever been personally, just as
well, actually, one of my friends was like, oh, you're interviewing Katie. Can you ask her this? And I thought it was she was like, I feel like, post-divorce life has provided so much like focus for you and your next steps. Like, you just seem like, she was like, oh, she seems like she's living her best life. Like, how has the divorce taught you that? I mean, the divorce is almost like your second rebirth day,
Yeah, having new lease on life in that sense too has been really nice because, like I said, I really chose myself and my happiness, whatever that looked like, whether I was like alone, which I'm never going to be like alone, or met somebody new. Like I was open to it all, but really just wanted to focus on myself and continue because I'd only got to that point of deciding, what I needed to do because I had been working on myself and my relationship with myself, my body, my mental health, everything like that. So I wanted to keep moving on that. And sometimes when you start making yourself available to other people emotionally, mentally, physically, like that can derail the work that you're trying to do. So that just became my primary focus of just like woke up every day, like how do I want to spend today? On just one day at a time. And then obviously having like goals to like focus on and work towards like with the sandwich shop and I don't know, just like being more physically active and like just with whatever things I knew made me feel good. I just had to focus on that because I didn't have anyone else I needed to show up for call, check in on, be accountable for at all.
You didn't have to take care of anybody but yourself.
Oh.
Well, and I think what's great about your life now is people are always asking me, like, how do I be happy before I meet the guy, right? Because that's what we were taught, at least growing up. It's like, your life begins when Prince Charming kisses you and all that stuff. The Disney princesses, I mean, the OG Disney princesses fucked us all over, I think.
Yeah.
Not the new ones that are like feminist and everything. But you are very much single, but you are not alone. And you seem so content and beyond that fulfilled with your group of friends. And so I think that's the important part about being a woman, is realizing that you can foster a community and a family without a man.
Yeah, I think some people also, when it comes to identity too, like, who are you? What do you like? What do you like to do? What makes you happy? What's fun in your life, your hobbies, your interests, all those things. I think really discovering those things about yourself can make you feel so whole and so fulfilled that, like, you're not trying to, like, look for it in anybody else. Because I think when you're I see a lot of women I know that have gone from one serious long-term relationship to the next, and they don't spend any time alone. And I'm just like, who are you? You become a slightly different version of yourself depending on, or of themselves depending on who they were dating. But I don't think they ever spent time fully alone where they're like, who the hell am I?
But I think that's so much harder to be alone and try to figure out who you are, because then all of a sudden you have to make your own decisions. And I think I know, and I speak from experience.
Yeah.
In my 20s, I spent so much time jumping around from relationship to relationship because I didn't want to get to know myself, because the voices were not great. And I think I realized when I met my husband and the relationship was so not dramatic and it was just easy. And everyone's like, oh, I thought my life would be perfect when I met the one, right? The guy. And I actually, for the first time, could hear I went fucking nuts. I mean, it was the first time I realized, like, a year and a half after I met my husband, I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, not in the way that people are like, oh, I'm so OCD about clean, like true, pure OCD. Oh. I had more mental health shit than I ever did because I realized I'd spent so much time focusing on trying to fix broken relationships as a way to distract myself from trying to fix myself. Mm-hmm. And so now all of a sudden I was with like a guy that didn't need fixing. I mean, he wasn't perfect, but he was like, I'm going to take care of my own shit. You got to focus on you. And so I was really lucky to find that in my marriage. But if you're jumping around from guy to guy because you don't want to fix yourself, like, you got to take a look at that.
Oh, 100%. I think also just taking a look at the people around you, and do these people motivate me and inspire me? Like, what is the value of the people around you? That's kind of a big shift that I made too. Not that I didn't have like friends always, but like my social network was very entangled with Tom's.
Right.
And so I just like started connecting with old friends I didn't get to spend a lot of time with just because they were like a little too far out of my social circle. But also like around like women who were really making things happen for themselves and really powerful individuals. And I was like, that's the kind of energy I want to be around, because it's going to rub off via osmosis. It has to. No,
and it has.
But just like same with like visual diets are so important as well, and can really be detrimental if you're constantly consuming things that aren't good for your mental health. Like, so just shifting all of that. I think it's only scary for a little while, but like
the unknown is always scary until you get to know it.
Oh,
and then it's not the unknown.
No, but it's even though it's unpredictable,
right?
It's actually it's a huge gift. I consider giving myself a gift. Like, I thought I was losing my house, losing my marriage, losing my husband, losing my future. But I was like, I just gave myself the rest of my life. So that's really cool.
That's beautiful. And that's the perfect way to end this. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Katie. This was so inspiring.
Yeah, thank you.
Really appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I love watching your videos and content because I'm just like, yes, she gets it. She gets all the good advice. And like, again, the things that we all have like told ourselves and thought at one point, but just don't want,
I know. Sometimes you just need it from a random stranger on the internet like me, right?
I love it. That's part of my visual diet.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be part of your visual diet. Don't cut that part of the diet out.
No,
right.
No.
Thanks again. All right.
Thank you.